The wind was screaming over the Afghan ridge, a soundless, biting cry that carried the smell of sand and cordite. The valley below was chaos, dust clouds, gunfire flashes, and men shouting into radios that could barely cut through the noise. Amid it all, she knelt in silence. A thin figure, face half hidden beneath a torn shemagh, rifle laid steady across a rock she'd been using for hours as her only friend. No one noticed her at first. In fact, most of the platoon thought she was just another support tech tagging along for logistics, the quiet girl who rarely spoke, who always listened but never volunteered. That day, however, when the commander's desperate voice boomed over the noise, "Any snipers here?" everything changed. The girl slowly looked up, her eyes as calm as if the war had muted itself for her alone. She didn't speak, she didn't raise her hand. But she stood, wordless, and walked toward the cliff's edge where the spotter lay wounded. The commander turned to shout something, perhaps a warning, but the look in her eyes stopped him mid-sentence. It wasn't arrogance or defiance. It was something else, something old, something that had already seen loss deeper than the war around them. Her name was Lena Hale, 23 years old, attached to the base as a technical analyst and medic. At least, that's what her file said. No one at the forward base knew that she had once trained under one of the world's most elite sniper programs, one she had abandoned years ago after a tragic mission that left her brother dead in her arms. She had promised herself never to touch a rifle again, never to pull another trigger, never to let war take what little was left of her heart. But war doesn't make promises. It only takes them. That morning, the platoon was ambushed during an extraction mission in the barren ridge between Kuna and Nuristan. The enemy had pinned them down from impossible range, shots landing with eerie precision. They had already lost their sniper, their spotter, and 2 medics. Communications were breaking, supplies were low, and somewhere out there, a sniper with godlike aim was hunting them one by one. Lena's hands trembled as she picked up the fallen rifle, an M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, its barrel coated in dust and blood. The weapon felt both foreign and familiar, heavy in her arms, yet perfectly balanced. She remembered her brother's voice the night before their final mission, "The rifle doesn't take lives, Lena. The person behind it saves them." She had never believed that, until now. As she lay flat against the rock, eyes peering through the scope, the world seemed to shrink into a single line, the crosshair in the endless horizon. Through the lens, she could see the enemy snipers glint, almost 5 kilometers away, perched high on a shadowed ridge. The distance was absurd, nearly double the confirmed record of any shot made in combat. But Lena didn't think about records. She thought about the dying soldiers around her, about the commander shouting into static, and about the promise she once made to protect life, even if it meant breaking herself. The wind was fierce, gusting in unpredictable directions. Every sniper knew, distance wasn't the only enemy. Wind, humidity, the curvature of the earth itself, all of it conspired against a bullet's flight. But she adjusted. Calculations danced silently in her mind, years of training resurfacing like buried ghosts. Her finger brushed the trigger lightly, not with aggression but with something close to tenderness. She breathed in once, held, exhaled slowly, the way her brother had taught her. Then, silence. The shot echoed like a whisper of fate. For 4 long seconds, nothing happened. Then, in the far distance, a flash, and silence. Again, the incoming fire stopped, completely. The valley held its breath. When she finally looked up, the commander was staring at her like he'd seen a ghost. The spotter's binoculars hung limp in his hand, his jaw trembling. 4,200 meters, he whispered, almost reverently. "That's impossible." But Lena wasn't listening. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't even proud. She was crying, quietly. No one saw it but the dirt below her, catching her tears. Because that one perfect shot, that impossible, history-breaking shot, had forced her to reopen a wound she'd buried long ago. They made it back to base before sunset, the wounded carried, the dead honored. The commander filed his report, calling her, "the calmest sniper I've ever seen." Word spread across the camp, then the division, then command. Everyone wanted to know who she was, where she'd come from, and why no one had heard of her before. But Lena said nothing. She returned to the medic tent, washed her hands, and tended to the wounded as if nothing had happened. Later that night, the commander found her sitting alone outside the tent, watching the horizon where she'd made the shot. The wind had softened now, carrying the faint hum of distant mountains. He didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone who saved dozens of lives and broke the laws of physics doing it? He stood there for a moment, then saluted her quietly, the way one soldier salutes another, not out of rank, but out of respect. Lena returned the gesture faintly, her eyes glimmering with something beyond pride, a quiet peace. The war would go on, but inside her, something had finally settled. She had faced the weapon that had haunted her. She had turned her pain into purpose. And though she'd saved countless lives that day, she knew that, in a strange and silent way, the one she truly saved was her own. Days later, Command tried to promote her, to decorate her, to send her story across the military channels. But she declined every offer. Her only request was simple: to remain unnamed, unrecorded, unseen. "The bullet doesn't belong to me," she said softly. "It belonged to everyone I couldn't save." Months passed, but the story of the silent girl sniper became legend. Soldiers whispered about her in tents and trenches, calling her the ghost with the 4,200-meter soul. Some said she'd left the service entirely. Others claimed she still walked the ridges of Kuna, unseen, guarding patrols from a distance. No one ever found out the truth. But every now and then, when a young soldier asked the old commander if the story was real, he would smile faintly, stare at the distant mountains, and say, "Some shots don't echo in sound. They echo in hearts." And somewhere far away, in a small cabin by the sea, Lena Hale would sit quietly at dawn, the ocean wind brushing her face as she watched the horizon through an old, scarred scope. Her hands were steady again. Her heart, finally, was too. Rice plant. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Every gesture keeps stories like this alive, stories of courage, pain, and redemption that remind us what it means to be human. Speech balloon. Special request to comment. Tell me, what did you feel when Lena took that shot? Did it break you, heal you, or both? Your words might help someone else find their strength again.